You know when you see players you grew up watching get older and their games steadily regress? Yet it still seems like they're productive up until the final years of their career. However, that wasn't the case with Chris Paul, who saw his career turn into dust overnight, and he got dismissed by the team that once meant so much to him.
Breaking news that shocked the basketball world. In the middle of the night, Chris Paul posted on his social media saying, quote, "I just found out I'm being sent home."
It wasn't just his game that completely fell off in his final year, but the moment he returned to Los Angeles, he was met with a team that did not care about anything he had to say. Remember when him and his wife hosted a Halloween party and he invited his teammates? But very few of them came. It was clear from this that they really didn't like him that much. This culminated with an awkward interaction and phone conversation between him and coach Tyronn Lue. One phone call. That's all it took for Tyronn Lue to permanently end the career of one of the greatest point guards of all time. Shortly after Paul got sent home in the middle of their road trip, that was it. For a guy who joined the Clippers with the intention of retiring with the team that initially welcomed him with open arms, this seemed like a slap in the face, but it was his own undoing. In this video, let's take a look at Paul and 4 other players who saw their careers get destroyed by a single moment, and the 2025-26 season was not kind to them.
And you just let him go like a thief in the night, like he's garbage, like he meant nothing to the organization.
Hey guys, so I've been looking to get tickets to see the Spurs play during the best year they've had in a long time, so I want to give the sponsor of this video, SeatGeek, a huge shout out. With over 35 million downloads, over 70,000 events listed, SeatGeek is the app to get tickets. Baseball season is just around the corner, the NCAA tournament is almost here, and the NBA season is heading towards a crazy postseason where nobody knows who's gonna win. You can even get World Cup tickets on SeatGeek. It's so easy to use. For every event, you can see the view from your seat for each ticket. Green dots mean they're great deals, while red dots are kinda bad. And every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, so you know you're buying from a safe source. Obviously, I've been to several NBA games with SeatGeek, saw the Rockets, Spurs, and the Mavs last year too, and I've got a special deal for you guys. You can use my code ANDYHOOPS10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with my promo code ANDYHOOPS10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. Imagine being one of the most iconic point guards in history and still being productive in the twilight years of your career, even until his most recent year in San Antonio. But then, in the span of a single summer, your body realizes, wait a minute, you're 40 years old. And soon, your game fell off a cliff. Not just that, but the team you joined, a team that once loved you for turning the franchise around, decided that you're such a nuisance that they don't care about your retirement tour. That's what happened to Chris Paul. However, what actually caused the Clippers to turn on him was a buildup of different things, which led to one final phone call with his coach, Tyronn Lue. Originally reported by Ramona Shelburne, she stated, quote, "The call began with Paul asking Lue why he'd been benched for the second half of the Clippers game the night before, a game in which the Clippers led by 3 points at the half only to lose by 13. Lue responded by saying that Paul's tone in the locker room was too critical and created divisiveness. Even the players agreed with Lue. While Paul tried to fix it and get back into the team's good graces, even making a public apology in the locker room, the damage had already been done. There was no fixing this relationship. Lue and CP3 never had another real conversation after that, and he was immediately sent home in the middle of a road trip. Shortly after, he was released from the team, finishing his NBA career in the saddest way imaginable, but also in the most CP3 way imaginable. His leadership style has been labeled as abrasive over his career, and it looks like it finally bit him in the butt. Now, you can point to this single phone call as the reason that caused a rift between him and Tyronn Lue, but the fact that he was both useless on the court and a nuisance in the locker room is what ultimately caused his demise. In just the previous year, he was still kind of a productive player for the Spurs. He played in all 82 games and started in all 82 games at the age of 39. And he was still shooting the ball quite well. He played 28 minutes a game, and he still had his patented assist-to-turnover ratio, which was the second highest in the league behind Tyrese Halliburton. At that point, I don't think anyone ever thought CP3 would fall off this hard, because as his body regresses, he's still such a smart player. By every metric, he made a positive impact, and from the accounts of his Spurs teammates, they actually liked him and welcomed his leadership. But his same style of leadership is not reciprocated in the same manner when he joined a much older, more experienced Clippers team. There was no major injury, no reasonable explanation for his drop-off other than age, I guess. So even if he wasn't a locker room nuisance, the team realized he wasn't a good player anymore, so it's likely that Paul would have been waived or permanently benched regardless, even without the divisive locker room talk. I remember making a video a while back about the saddest ways that superstars saw their careers end, but this one takes the cake. Lonzo Ball. For Lonzo, this was a long time coming. When he joined the Cavs in the summer of 2025, this was supposed to be his first healthy season in a long time. The Cavs traded for him with the hope that maybe he really can return and play like the guy we saw back on the Pelicans, or his first season on the Bulls where he looked like the best 3-and-D point guard in the entire league.
He's made two good defensive plays in a row. Ball for Caruso! Triple-double! And the Caruso show! And out! And Lonzo Ball!
That was what they hoped for, but immediately upon his arrival to Cleveland, they could tell he was done. His recurring knee problems were basically degenerative at this point. There was no way for him to fully recover and regain the speed or lift he once had. Thus, it led to his worst year ever. Even worse than his rookie season in LA. So the Cavs gave up quite quickly, and the moment they traded him to Utah, a team that was literally tanking to the bottom of the standings, you'd expect Lonzo would get some minutes on a team trying to lose. But no, not even a tanking team wanted him, so they waived him on the same day they got him. This waiver by the Utah Jazz was possibly the final nail in his coffin. It signaled that Lonzo's final chance at redemption was over, and there's nothing he could do. This was a unique season for him, because it was essentially a, quote, test year. The Cavs and other teams wanted to know how healthy he was. He wasn't just auditioning for a spot in the Cavs rotation, but for the rest of the league to see as well. They were eager to see how he plays. Could it be possible that this once coveted point guard returned back to his usual self? It turns out 35 games was enough for everyone to realize he cannot play anymore. Perhaps the end of Lonzo's career was imminent. Back in 2022, what seemed like a normal meniscus tear turned into complication after complication, which led to 3 different knee surgeries since then. Lonzo himself stated, quote, "There was no more meniscus left, and bone on bone was rubbing. The cartilage was gone." By 2024, the doctors concluded he needed a meniscus donor, which he eventually got. This should have been the final sign that he'll never have normal knees again. The fact that he needed somebody to donate a meniscus to him shows there's something seriously wrong with his recovery. That took yet another year of rehab, so by the time he got to Cleveland, Lonzo was already damaged goods, and there was a high probability he'd never be the same again. The trial run, or the test run the Cavs gave him, basically concluded his career was over after he played so poorly. After multiple surgeries and nearly 4 years of rehab, it's sad to see such a talented player never recover. Mike Conley. We talked about Chris Paul being the prime example of an older guy suddenly dropping off, as he went from somewhat productive to completely useless. Unfortunately, something similar happened to Mike Conley. Even though he's still in the league and got re-signed to Minnesota and rejoined the team, his play fell off so hard it almost seems unbelievable how different he looks. It was a single playoff run, the 2025 playoffs, that signaled the beginning of the end of Conley's days as a useful player. Over the course of the previous year, Conley's game was clearly regressing, but he was still at the point where he was productive in certain aspects of the game. For example, he could still hit the wide-open 3. He could still orchestrate the offense effectively and give Anthony Edwards a breather. That's why he still played 71 games, 25 minutes a game, and started in almost every single game. Being a 37-year-old who's 6'1", 170, he already beat the odds by lasting this long as a starter. But right when the playoffs began, his age quickly started to show. Under any defensive pressure, Conley had trouble dealing with it. With defenses cutting off his three-point shot, he couldn't do anything else. He didn't have the speed to drive and finish anymore. In the conference finals against OKC, Conley did not hit a single two-point shot in 4 straight games. And his threes were not falling either, so he was actively damaging this team every moment on the court. It was obvious that Conley, at his age, was not capable of playing against a defense as aggressive as OKC's. Not to mention, at his small, fragile size, there really wasn't anything he could do at either end of the floor. The 2025 playoffs was the worst run of his career, and to make matters worse, it signified his days as a good player were over, because by the start of the 2025-26 season, he regressed even further. He got benched and then traded by the Timberwolves to Chicago, and then Chicago traded him to Charlotte before he got released and signed back with the Wolves. Now, normally, you can't re-sign with the same team that traded you away in the middle of a season, but since Conley got traded twice, apparently he could? Nonetheless, the Wolves are aware he's unplayable, but Conley still has value as a leader, a veteran voice in the locker room who every single player on this team listens to, and definitely worth the minimum contract the Wolves signed him to. Kevin Huerter. Remember when Kevin Huerter was regarded as one of the league's best three-point shooters? Dude was a sniper, an elite catch-and-shoot off-ball player.
Huerter for the three! Go!
In his first 6 years in Atlanta and Sacramento, he'd always be part of highly efficient rosters, and he's a major reason for that. Over the years, however, he's gotten traded several times, and something his teams have started to realize is he's a negative in every other aspect of the game. As a role player, he has very little skills outside of hitting a wide-open three. At the 2026 deadline, he got traded to the Detroit Pistons, the best team of the Eastern Conference. As great as the Pistons have become, three-point shooting is a weakness that's still a concern. They're bottom 10 in the league in three-point percentage, so one would think that the addition of Kevin Huerter would help resolve that. In fact, that's the reason Detroit wanted him to begin with, to give them a boost from the perimeter. Some thought he'd basically be the backup version of Duncan Robinson. However, it was soon after his arrival when they realized he did not fit within the team's identity. The Pistons have built their dominance on a solid foundation of rugged defense and physicality, both of which Huerter completely lacks. Now, I'm not saying guys like Tobias Harris or Duncan Robinson fit perfectly either, but they both try to. They've adapted, and they're both more physical than their reputation precedes them. Huerter has yet to find his niche in the deep rotation of the Pistons, because they'd much rather give more minutes to a defensive workhorse like Ron Holland, who can't shoot, as opposed to Kevin Huerter, who can kinda shoot, but he doesn't have the motor of physicality or intensity that makes this team good. To say he can shoot is an overstatement now. Due to his back and hip problems early in the season, Huerter's shot fell off a bit. After his back injury in Chicago, he shot just 32% from three until he got traded to Detroit. Perhaps they suspected that this would be a recurring problem, and it's worse than they had expected. If Huerter isn't hitting shots, what exactly can he do? The answer is nothing. With one single trade, one minor back issue that turned into something bigger, Huerter dropped to the end of the bench, and his career is now dangling by a thread. D'Angelo Russell. Now, the general perception of D'Lo through his entire career had been, this dude is fun to watch. He has some amazing bursts of highlight reel plays, but also not a winning player, and has spent more time as a tank commander than actually winning games. Even on the Lakers a few years ago, he wasn't necessarily bad. At least if you glance at his numbers, he seems like a solid starting point guard who shot the three ball incredibly well. Better than he's ever had before, actually. Yet, when the playoffs began, it's obvious D'Angelo Russell is not built to be a starting point guard for any playoff team. It's not just his lack of effort on defense or losing focus at the most random times. He's just completely unaware of everything going on around him. The dude might have the lowest IQ of any point guard in the league, and he's gotten by for so long due to his sheer talent. If not for his craftiness and shooting touch that got him drafted at number 2 all those years ago, he has no other redeeming qualities. For a long time, he was given ample minutes by every team he's played for, even the Lakers. Some would suggest he only got playing time because they had no other options. But Russell was decent in a lesser role. Yet once again, when the playoffs started, he could not adapt to any kind of situation, and his lack of intuition was exploited. This spiraled into an even more devastating moment. October of 2024. Russell suffered a foot injury along with recurring lower back issues. Both of these things drained him of his speed and crippled his balance on his jump shot. All of a sudden, with these injuries that sat the remainder of his talent, all that was left was a shell of a former All-Star, a low IQ point guard who doesn't have any knowledge of how to play the position. The Lakers immediately noticed this and traded him by the 2025 deadline, and then a few months later, he signed with Dallas, who realized the same thing. He was a horrible point guard and could not play anymore. When they traded him to the Wizards, they didn't expect him to suit up at all. That's ironic, isn't it? The man once known as a glorious tank commander gets traded to one of the worst tanking teams in the league, the Wizards. Yet even they don't want anything to do with him. They don't even want him for his veteran guidance, because they know D'Lo's not providing any of that. Anyway, that's all folks. Those were 5 NBA players who saw their careers basically get destroyed overnight. With guys like CP3 and Lonzo Ball's careers likely over permanently, these others are holding on by a thread. Even though it seemed like a year ago, they were still productive. So guys, what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.